coaching. Kunoa coaching.
Well, welcome to the Kunoa podcast today, everybody. I've got Roberta with me today. Roberta, how are you?
I'm good, Marie. How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'm really pleased to have you with us today because I think this topic of public speaking is just, in everybody's mind. Do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners so that they can get a bit of background on you?
Truly my pleasure. My name is Roberta. I am a South African who is a public speaker, and I also coach people on how to speak in public. I coach people on how to make sales pitches. A lot of people have ideas on their hard drives, but they don't know how to go and pitch to potential clients. And I help with presentation skills, especially with business and career professionals who either want to sell their product and bring it to the market, and professionals who want to climb the corporate ladder, because you cannot climb the corporate ladder really if you don't know how to communicate, no matter how well you do in your expertise. So that's what I do.
So this is a really big topic, and we talk about it a lot in leadership, because if you're going to be any sort of leader, you've got to be able to communicate really well with everybody around you. So if you were to give anybody kind of a major tip as to where should you start with communication, what would that be?
The first place you can start is everything is usually mental. Like they all say, mindset. The first place to start is one, to believe that you can actually do this. Did you know that statistics show that more people prefer death than public speaking, than standing in front of the audience? And one of the reasons is people feel judged. We're all afraid of being judged. Look at social media. We are all afraid of being judged. And so people always think I'm going to freeze there because people will be looking out for my mistakes, what I did wrong, if I went too fast or too slow. The first thing you need to remember is this, which is going to shock a lot of people. The audience is rooting for you. They want to hear your message. They want you to do well. And so don't be afraid of being judged. Nobody sits there thinking, oh, I hope Marie messes this up. I can't wait to make it go back. Nobody thinks that. So please, the first thing you need to believe is you can do this. And the audience is looking forward to hearing from you. So don't rob them of that.
I think this is really interesting, because you were saying in your bio about kind of communication in social media. So where I've kind of spoken to some women professionals, some female professionals, they've said, well, I started putting a smiley face after my words because people were saying I was too aggressive as a leader. And it's kind of got to a point where some people don't know how to communicate because we've stopped using, real language and how to write real language. And we've started going into this weird, 120 characters or something like that. How can you kind of get past that instead of being really insecure about, do I put a smiley face? Do I put exclamation marks? How can you get past that into a way that you're happy with communicating?
It's so interesting you say that. This past week on my private Facebook group, one of the things we were discussing was how texting language, the abbreviations, the acronyms have completely changed vocabulary, the way we communicate, formal business communication. I'm 45 years old. And so when I started working in the mid-90s, there was no internet. We used formal language. There was no cell phones that just come to the market, but I think the texting came much later. And so the way we addressed whether you write to your boss or a potential client or another business altogether, was very formal compared to how they do things now. And it's because of texting language. Therefore, as you say, some women especially will be seen as aggressive, and so you must use an emoji to sort of, calm it down so that you don't sound like you're too harsh, and the smiley face and this. That is what I call new age communication. We didn't need to do that because here's how we phrased our letters. Dear Miss Oldfield, let's say I'm writing to you in your business and we are looking to pitch something. Dear Miss Oldfield, herewith, please find attached, let's say attached to our company profile so that we know what we do and what we can potentially do for your company. And then we say, If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to, if you have further questions, please don't hesitate to contact our offices. I look forward to further discussion on this topic. Kind regards, or sometimes we used to say sincerely, and our company logo and our name. So because of that, we didn't need emojis. Doesn't that sound respectful enough?
I like it. I mean, this whole like, hello, how are you? How is your day? I hope you're well, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh goodness, come on, what do you want to say to me?
Exactly. So if I do that, do I need to put a smiley face so that you don't feel like, oh, she's so harsh, I don't want to work with her?
No, it sounds reasonable.
Exactly. And because of that, we didn't need emojis. They didn't exist to begin with, but we didn't need emojis because our business communication language was respectful enough. When you read it, you receive that very well. It's warm. It's you say, I really want to work with these people if this is how they address me. But now that has all changed. So what do? This is why some people feel like, oh, I need to tone it down with an emoji, with a smiley face, with this, because the language itself has completely changed. And when we had that discussion, another thing that was brought up was, like I said, I'm 45, so I started working in the mid-90s. You still have the older generation communicating the way we did. So now you have fresh hires, this fresh graduates coming in with this new lingo. So how do you break that barrier? Because the old generation still speaks formally, and they say, these new millennials don't even know how to write a letter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And sometimes depending how flexible your boss is or how up to date he is, it can sometimes create a barrier for your career because they feel you don't even know how to write a letter because he's been working since the 90s or the 80s and he communicates a certain way. So we also have that problem in the corporate world right now.
I do prefer formal business communication because I think a lot of the problems where people read between the lines and then take offense to things are because they feel that the communication is a lot more personal and they can't really tell what's being said. And actually 10, 20 years ago, it was very clear what was being said and it wasn't a personal thing at all. It was just formal business communication from a business person to business person.
The correspondence was purely about what we are talking about. There was nothing personal whatsoever. Yeah, exactly.
And that actually causes a ripple effect out into the company culture, because then when people take offense to other people's emails, it starts to become a problem within the team and then a problem within the business, and it can break down relationships just because somebody assumes that something's been said between the lines when we're not on Facebook or Twitter, we're on a business formal email.
Didn't I say earlier that social media has brought this problem about? Exactly. So when I worked with engineering companies. When you have a project, you have engineers, you had me out to transport planning, you had urban planners, you had environmental scientists, you had different professionals coming together because we have to implement this project and see it through. And 1 or 2 times we'll have to outsource some of the expertise to an outside company that specializes in that. If it's an environmental company, usually environmental companies were what we outsourced because our company did not usually hire environmental scientists. So when you communicate with professionals who are experts in what they do, which you are not really well versed in because you are expert in what you do, if you in a project management meeting, you don't have time to be offended. You have deadlines, you have client expectations you have to meet. So we did not have time to nitpick on personal things. You know, the urban planner will come and say, this is how I see this panning out. This is how I see this being done when we implement. Okay, the transportation experts, what do you think should be done here on this corner? And then I just tell them. And then the next, do you see how that happens instead of, you know, nitpicking and thinking, oh, I didn't like the email you sent, or, you know, you speak to me like I'm a Twitter, we did not have that. And so if we can incorporate that, I think that could be the first step to breaking down that personal communication barrier of thinking that everything is attacking you, and just focus on the matter at hand.
It seems as well, you know, when you're in the office and people say, how are you in the morning? They don't care. You know, it's just a thing. And then when you get an email and it says, how are you? Hope you're well. It's like no one cares. So if we're just consistently using these overly personal sets of language, and then we go into, and by the way, this project's doing X, Y, and Z, immediately that project can become emotional to the person, because actually you started it off with an emotional couple of sentences asking how you are and then about your project, where that then can't be split apart between the business part and the personal part. Are you my friend? Are you not my friend? What are you talking about? You're listening to the Kuinua podcast. If you want to ask a question to our experts, just go to kuinuacoaching.com and you will find the link to the podcast where you can leave us a voice message or send us an email, and we will ask your question direct to the expert. That's kuinuacoaching.com. Kuinua Coaching is set up to offer mentoring, coaching and courses in leadership, negotiation and soft skills. If you're interested in finding out more about what Kuinua Coaching has to offer you, you can get in touch via Facebook, Instagram. You can type Kuinua into Google. You can email us on kuinuacoaching@gmail.com or go to our website at kuinuacoaching.com. That's kuinuacoaching.com.
It's funny, we worked in cubicles. Usually engineering companies, there were like 400 people in our office. We worked in cubicles. So when a person walks down the corridor, morning Roberta, morning Adrian, morning this person, that's it. So when they send me an email to say, Roberta, please fill in your transportation part on this report, they didn't need to say, how are you, and make pleasantries that I was gonna feel were not genuine, or ask about my kids and so on. They didn't need to do that. You can do that at the cafeteria, totally acceptable. But when dealing with the project, stick to the subject matter at hand.
So with public speaking, we were saying before we started the podcast about how if you're going to be in business and you're going to be, I mean, especially an entrepreneur, you need to have a profile, and part of that profile is going to involve some sort of public speaking, because you're going to want to get your message out. You're going to want to influence people and let them know what you're doing. Why do you think it is that so many people are so scared of public speaking?
As I said earlier, they feel judged. They feel like they're going to make a mistake. Guess what? Your favorite best public speaker that you know makes a ton of mistakes. They make a ton of mistakes. It's just that we live in the editing world now, where they can first edit the video before posting it on YouTube, so everything is perfect, and you think, I can never be that good. Please don't be fooled. Make a ton of mistakes. If you are prepared, meaning if you have the message, the information to deliver to the right audience, what I do is I will help you structure your speech, because the thing about the structure is you need your audience to be able to follow this journey, taking them through this process of understanding where you're going with this. This is where I come in, but you need to have the information at hand to say, okay, this is what by the end of my speech, I want these people to know about what I have to offer. And there are elements that go into a speech that, you start with something strong. Icebreakers need to be strong. Otherwise, now that we have mobile phones, people start pulling up their phones and checking their social media again.
Or sleeping sometimes.
Or sleeping, or thinking about their bills. And then usually when you give out a speech, you must have usually not more than 3 key major points that you're going to cover. You don't want people sleeping and getting bored. 3 major points that you're going to zoom in on. You summarize because they've forgotten what you said at the beginning. And then you have a strong conclusion or call to action for them to go and implement what you were talking to them about. So when you have those elements, and don't forget humor. If you don't be afraid to make a mistake, and don't forget humor. Be human. You are still talking to humans. Yes, we are professionals, but be human. Humor I recommend it should be relative to your speech. Please don't do the a pope and a lawyer walk into a bar jokes. They are so tired.
Maybe not.
Please do not do that. People have heard the pope and a lawyer walk into a bar jokes for too long. Your jokes can be something related to what you're talking about. You can do self-deprecating humor, but not harmful, not saying bad things about yourself, but something where you slip up and you make a joke about yourself, because that connects you with people. They see the human in you, you know. So yes, there are elements that go into it. If you are prepared, just remember, people are rooting for you. They want to hear what you have to say. So they really hope you win when you stand on the stage. And I can understand the fear, because we are tribal by nature. We want to belong. You want to be part of the group, you know. So when you're on stage, all eyes are on you and you're scared and the spotlight is on you. So that just that position alone, I can understand why people feel vulnerable. But once you get over that, you'll realize that, hey, people we're really looking forward to have me say something.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, if you were going to do a speaking, engagement, or you were going to present at a conference, or you were going to do a workshop, and nobody turned up, you could probably think, well, nobody wants to hear me speak then. But if a lot of people turn up, or just some people turn up, it's because they want to hear what you've got to say. So if you turn up and then you say, oh, I'm really scared and I don't want to stand in a spotlight and this is really difficult, then how are you going to tell the people what they came to listen to? Because they actually want to learn something from you. So to me, it's a positive experience, because people have actually turned up to listen to you and learn from you as well.
They are eager to know what's on your mind. Speaking of people not showing up, let me give this quick example. There's one of the well-known speakers, his name is Paul Fink. And I listened to one of the speeches he was given, and he said when he started his first speech, they had 75 chairs. They were expecting about 75 people, and only 2 showed up. He said you would have thought, okay, I'm either gonna quit or not do my best. Well, 2 people, what is that? That's basically nothing. But guess what he did? Because of his attitude, he still gave the best speech as if there were 75 people sitting in the room. Out of those 2 people, one of them was so grateful that he did his best despite being the 2 of them. A lot more of his future business came from that one person. Right? So wherever you are, do your best. You don't know who you're going to touch. You don't know whose life you're going to change. You don't know who's going to change your life based on the fact that you did your best.
That's so true. You never know who in the audience might say, that's really good, I want to do some more work with you. You never ever know. And actually, you've got to do your best, because then you never know what opportunities there might be.
That's right. Always do your best. Always do your best, but be human and be genuine. Don't be scripted. I know sometimes you might watch some speeches on YouTube where people are like animalistic and theatrics and they look like they're on a Broadway show. It works for them. And I don't knock anyone's style. Everybody, that's who they are. But don't look at that and think that's how I'm supposed to be. No. Be you. People will connect. Everything is energy. People will connect the energy of the authentic you. Be yourself. Be Marie. Learn the techniques from someone else. But when you are on stage, you are Marie. You're not trying to be Roberta. Be you. That's what people are going to connect with and remember.
Well, that's the unique selling point, isn't it, of all of us, our individuality?
Yes, exactly. Don't be a carbon copy of somebody else's theatrics or stage presence. Be your own stage presence, and just learn the techniques and the tips to give the most amazing speech you can. But it must be you giving the speech.
Do you think that there's any kind of difference in communication between technical teams and non-technical teams? I mean, especially with public speaking as well, people might think, well, it's easier to go and speak about things like HR, and it's harder to speak about things like computer science. Do you think there's any kind of gap there?
That is true. So when like I said, I was working with engineers, structural, road engineers, etc., and civil engineers. So as time progressed, I came to be more involved with software engineers, the tech guys, what we call the nerds, right? they generally, as society, we've always put them in this box of, oh, he's so good at computers, obviously he doesn't know how to be social, he doesn't know how to speak to people, which is usually not true. But sometimes when professionals who are good in that field, I think they just assimilate that and think, oh, I'm supposed to be a nerd, I'm supposed to not have social skills because society expects that because I'm so good at programming, which is, like I said, not necessarily. So when they embrace that personality, it then hinders them in when the boss says, okay, let's go, we're going to pitch this to Amazon, to the Amazon directors, we're going to pitch your programming idea to Amazon directors. And so he takes on that personality, I'm a nerd, I cannot speak. It's not good for your career. So usually I work with them. When you deliver a pitch, it's very different from just speaking, like you said, about HR, etc. The first thing you need to remember is when you are presenting to Amazon directors and you have this brilliant computer program, they're not familiar with it. So you're going to maintain that balance between informing them what it does and how they're going to benefit from it, and not using too much technical lingo that they have no idea what you're talking about. You may have a graph or some numbers or some things to explain, but don't have too much of those. Always try and bring it back to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because at that point, even though they are grown-ups, they are 5-year-olds in what you are talking about because they've never heard of it before. So you maintain that delicate balance between them understanding how it's going to benefit Amazon and they have to make a decision based on your presentation, and you pitching it and say, this is what I can do for your organization to make this aspect better. So there's a different way of preparing that presentation to just a general speech talking about a certain topic. And the second thing to remember, speaking of presentations, I don't know if you've seen how some presenters just write a whole novel on the slides. What happens in that?
God.
What happens when you see that, Marie?
Oh, I could read it at home. I don't need to be here. And when they set it up and it says page 1 of 50, no, I'm leaving.
Exactly. Don't write page numbers. Don't have that many. You don't need 50. And when you write a novel, like you said, I can read it myself. So this is the presenter. These are the slides, and she wrote a novel. She's reading it exactly how it's written. So where are my eyes? Are my eyes going to the presenter, or are they going there? So while they read, I'm reading too, and I actually read faster, So, and I'm not even looking at them. It takes the eyes away from the presenter. You must have bullet points, about 3 or 4 on each slide. And each bullet point should be about 2 or 3 words. You know your material. You don't need to write the novel on the slide. Just, let's say you're talking about dogs. Your first slide would be man's best friend. Your second slide, security. Your third slide, healthcare. So first one, a dog is man's best friend. We have dogs who help the blind. You see, my slides have 6 words. My slide has 6 words, but I'm going to tell the story myself. I don't need to write every single word of the slide. That's the one mistake most presenters make, and it doesn't work well. Like you said, people just start reading. And
overcomplicated pictures as well. When there's lots of overcomplicated pictures, I tend to just sit there and examine them, and I'm not listening.
Exactly. Like I was saying about overcomplicating your tech pitch, then people just switch off, Not a lot of people know what was in your mind when you came up with this programming language. So try to simplify it for the general audience as much as possible. Only then will they understand how it's going to benefit them. Like you said, you just switch off if, oh, this is too complicated. Oh, no. That's what people do. So you have to remember those things. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe maybe it can be quite worrying if you're actually doing that and you think, well, I've only got 2 words, and what happens if I forget what I'm talking about, or I get stage fright and then I've got nothing and I'm stood up there on my own? I mean, I normally find that I can bounce off those 2 words because it's something that I know quite in depth, but maybe, it only takes something to happen. I mean, I've been on panels where it's been a Zoom thing, and there's been a TV screen in front of the presenters, and all these things have been happening on the screen, and you're supposed to be talking, and it's very easy to forget what you're saying when things are happening in the audience or on a different screen.
Right.
What can you do to kind of help with that distraction?
Oh, the first thing, good point that you made that people might forget. Remember, you did practice your speech before actually presenting it. So when the dog example, man's best friend, security, healthcare for the dog, you already know what you're going to talk about. You've practiced it. You've practiced it in front of your friends, your family, or even yourself in front of the mirror. So you know your material. Because what happens, it's funny. Do you know who usually forgets parts of their speech? People who memorize it.
Oh, yes, because everything is, yeah. And then if you miss one point, you forget the rest of it.
Remember at school when you used to write exams?
Yeah.
And you memorize an essay is going to be asked on the exam paper. What happened when you forgot one word?
I was like, oh, what's next? What's the next
The rest
paragraph?
of
Where
it
am I
was
going?
gone. That's why memorizing is so dangerous. The rest of it was gone. When I talk about these 4 bullet points and the few key words, it's almost like having your sticky notes. It's like the presentation is your sticky notes. You know what it is. Your sticky notes, the 4 bullet points, are there to help you just remember what's the next part that you need to talk about. Because you've practiced. Unless you're one person who shoots from the hip, which I wouldn't recommend either. When you've practiced your speech, you know what you're going to talk about. The bullet points are there exactly to do that. Remind you what to talk about next. Because memorizing is dangerous. I've seen it. It's dangerous. You might forget one word, you freeze, and then the brain just shuts everything off afterwards.
And it sounds awful. It sounds really staged and cardboardy.
Yeah. Don't memorize. Just be you. That's what
Also,
people connect with.
You never know what's going to happen. What happens if something goes on in the audience, or another thing happens, or somebody's asking you questions and things are changing, but you just need to get through this script.
Exactly. So that's good. Like you were saying, the interruptions, when you know your material, the interruptions are not going to throw you off. You're going to be flexible. If somebody asks a question, you will answer that question. And then you go back because you remember, oh, I'm on bullet point number 3 on slide number 4. But when you're scripted and you've memorized and somebody interrupts you with a question, you don't remember the last thing you said.
Where was I?
You see the position you put yourself in. For me, the bullet points have always worked. No matter, even if you, or maybe sometimes the MC will say, Marie, I know we gave you 45 minutes to speak, but it looks like our program is running behind on time. How about you speak longer? If it's a subject you've practiced and you know and you've researched, you can even add extra stuff that you didn't prepare before. If you say, Marie, we are running a little behind, and you, instead of the 45 minutes, can you just speak for 20? Guess what you're going to do if you are prepared and in your material? You're just going to pick the key things, because it's now half the time you've prepared, right? You're just going to pick the stuff that is most important that they need to know. You cut down the rest of it and they can hear it another time. But if you've memorized, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah.
If you need to make it longer or if you need to make it shorter, what do you do? Because now you have this thing, they told you 45 minutes, and I'm gonna speak like a robot for 45 minutes. It doesn't allow you that flexibility.
And what happens if you need a slightly different angle?
Which usually happens.
That's happened to me.
Exactly.
10 minutes before, can you change the angle slightly? It's a different question.
And what did you do?
Just changed it. Because I didn't memorize anything. So I was just like, right, okay, let's just, we'll say the same stuff, but we'll just say slightly from this way, and then we'll cut it down a little bit. And then we might answer that one, but with this one, we'll do something a little bit different. So it's you need to be able to think on your feet a little bit. If you're going to do speaking, you need to be able to speak on your feet a little bit. If you're doing conferences, you can be a little bit more organized, I think, but there's still always that possibility that they're going to do what you said until you go longer, shorter, or a different angle.
Exactly. You've just proven that if you are prepared, you know your material, you just speak naturally, no matter the curveball, you will know exactly how to continue. It's not going to throw you off. It's the memorizing that is dangerous.
Because your core message should really be the same, and you can always work around that to do something. Whereas if it's memorized, it is that's I've never done that. Only with acting. And even with acting, things happen where you might need to change something, and it's not wrong, but it just, it might be slightly different.
Which means the theme of the conversation in the scene is going to be more or less similar.
Yeah.
You can ad-lib, you can change it up a little bit. If they say, okay, this was going to be a serious line, but try and make it sound like a joke, you can change it up a little bit because the general theme is going to be maintained. And that's exactly, it goes with the speaking as well.
Or someone forgets their line, or they say a different line, and then you have to try and get back to what you need to do, but you can't just go, oh, you've forgotten your line, we need to do this. You've got to try and do something within the scene to make them react.
Yes, ad-lib, life carries on, just go along with it. You will always be able to go along with the flow if you just speak naturally instead of being scripted or staged. No matter what happens, no matter the glitch, you'll always be able to find your feet. Like I said, think on your feet. It will just come to you because you are just being authentically you.
Well, we're coming to the end of the interview and it's just gone so quick. Do you want to let people know where they can find you on the internet?
All right. So the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, I have a private Facebook group where we have these discussions about speaking and communicating. It's called Eloquent Speakers Club. Eloquent Speakers Club, that's the Facebook group. And then on Instagram, it's one word, all small letters, no spaces, Coach and Speaker. Coach and Speaker. So if you contact me, we first usually have a 15-minute free consultation. So I find out exactly what it is you need, what the purpose of you wanting the speech or the presentation skills or the sales pitch training. And then we can schedule the actual training and coaching and helping you design a speech.
You were lucky to get that Instagram name. Coach and Speaker. That was a lucky, you managed to get that.
You know what's interesting? I changed that during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And it was available.
I would not have thought that was available. That's amazing.
It's a recent thing. I changed it during the pandemic. I'm like, oh, that's not taken. Oh, this is good. Coach and Speaker.
I would never have thought that was available.
Yeah.
These days, most things aren't. It's got to be Coach and Speaker 99 ... at.
Yes, because that's already taken. So you add a hashtag or a number, like you said. Yeah, that was available. Coach and Speaker, one word. And Eloquent Speakers Club is the Facebook group. We have all these discussions and I post tips on how to do better with your speaking on the private group. So just join the group. If you request, I think at first you used to join without me asking questions, etc. But I think if that's what I asked you, I will just accept you. And then, yes, we can. I do have a public Facebook profile as well. If you'd like to send me a friend request, but usually Eloquent Speakers Club is where I post most of my public speaking material.
And we will link all this down below so you can click straight through. Thank you so much for today, Roberta. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Marie, for having me. I'm really grateful that you spent the time with me today. Appreciate it.
You've been watching on YouTube or listening on an audio platform to the Kuno podcast. If you like what you're hearing, then don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any amazing content, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Kuno